It was a web of women, a web of women who kept the Hebrew children alive. It was a web of women, a web of women that helped the Hebrew children to survive. All right, so sing that with me, please. And I know, unfortunately, we got to stay on mute, but here we are. So just try it like this. It was a web of women, a web of women that kept the Hebrew children alive. It was a web of women, a web of women that helped the Hebrew children to survive. It was a web of women, a web of women that kept the Hebrew children alive. It was a web of women, a web of women that helped the Hebrew children to survive. Long ago on Egyptian soil, the Hebrew children multiplied, the Hebrew children toyed. Nasty Pharaoh, he made a lot of noise. He told Shiphrah and Puah to kill the baby boys. It was a web of women, a web of women that kept the Hebrew children alive. It was a web of women, a web of women that helped the Hebrew children to survive. Shiphrah and Puah ignored Pharaoh's scorn. They were loving midwives. They helped life to be born. Pharaoh was a madman, a monster through and through. But women have the power to do what they must do. It was a web of women, a web of women that kept the Hebrew children alive. It was a web of women, a web of women that helped the Hebrew children to survive. The Hebrew women in those dark years, they kept on having babies, they pushed through their fears. Yehovah had a baby, Moshe was his name. He would lead his people to freedom once again. It was a web of women, a web of women that kept the Hebrew children alive. It was a web of women, a web of women that helped the Hebrew children to survive. Shiphrah and Puah, Yehovah, Miriam, Pharaoh's daughter, well, the list goes on and on. Long ago, as the Torah states, women made the difference and women kept the faith. It was a web of women, a web of women that kept the Hebrew children alive. It was a web of women, a web of women that helped the Hebrew children to survive. It was a web of women, a web of women that kept the Hebrew children alive. It was a web of women, a web of women that helped the Hebrew children to survive. One more time. It was a web of women, a web of women that helped the Hebrew children alive. Well, it was a web of women, a web of women that helped the Hebrew children to survive. All right.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Kim. Really appreciate it. Beautiful song. Beautiful song. I'm the Reverend Janet Gollery McKeithen, and I'm the minister of the church in Ocean Park. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad that you're all here. I know that you could be anywhere else. You decided to be in front of your computer and turn this channel on instead of another Zoom. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here. You're welcome at the church in Ocean Park, no matter what your faith tradition is, because we welcome people of all faith traditions or no faith traditions. That means if you're Muslim, if you're Jewish, if you're a Christian, if you're Hindu, if you're Wiccan, if you're atheist, agnostic, whatever you are, or some combination, if you're Buddhist or you're not practicing any particular religion, or you practice a couple of them together, which many people do, you're welcome to the church in Ocean Park. You're welcome also if you're from Cambodia or Cameroon or Congo or Singapore, or if you have relatives in Jamaica or Korea or Japan or the Philippines or China or Hong Kong, Ethiopia, the Dominican, Mexico, Honduras, wherever you have family from, you're welcome here. Welcome if you're gay, if you're straight, if you're bisexual, if you're non-binary, if you're trans, you're welcome no matter what your status is. Welcome if you're sleepy. We're welcome if you're confused. You're welcome if you're happy, if you're sad, if you're angry, if you're so tired of this, you could scream. You're welcome if you can't wait for something else to happen. You're welcome if you got your shots. You're welcome if you don't want to get shots. You're welcome no matter what at the church in Ocean Park. As long as you're open to learning from one another and helping to create a better world, a more positive world, you're welcome at the church in Ocean Park. This is a sacred season. Today is Palm Sunday in the Christian tradition, so it's the beginning of Holy Week, which leads at next Sunday to Easter. And we're in beginning of Passover as well, and we will have our Passover, our annual Passover Seder with our own Rabbi Diane this evening at 5 o'clock, which will be announced later. And everybody is welcome to attend. She is a rabbi who is a part of our congregation. She's led our Seder many times before. So we're going to join the Cool Shoe gang this evening. It's also around the corner from the beginnings of Ramadan, and there's a Hindu holiday called Holi. It's tomorrow. It's just a sacred season all around. So this is a time for new beginnings and for introspection and time for different kinds of resurrection in our lives. And so I welcome you to this moment in time, and I look forward to the service this morning. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park. And now I turned over to Reverend Joseph.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Reverend Janet. Today, I'm going to speak about Palm Sunday. The theme, Palm Sunday, continues. Little people, unknown people, made Palm Sunday a reality. A man walking with a pitcher of water on his head, where ordinarily it would be a woman with a pitcher. A landlord who had a furnished upper room for the supper. The family who had a donkey that never even left the backyard. The ordinary people using palm branches reminiscent of the palms given to those victorious in the Grecian Olympics of the day. They, the ordinary people, made Palm Sunday possible. We are ordinary people, and we can make significant things happen. But Palm Sunday was no carnival. It was the first protest march against religious exclusivism and Roman political hegemony. It was a march against hanging people on trees on the Appian Way, which continued after the slave revolt led by Spartacus in 73 BC and into the time of Jesus. As they marched, they chanted, Hosanna, save us now. Today, I believe, after a little research, today is the first time in many years that the first day of the Jewish Passover is on the same day as Palm Sunday. Today is full moon, and today we prepare to fly a drone over the surface of Mars. But we have not fully overcome the lessons of history. Today we are still marching and chanting Hosanna. We are still marching against hanging on trees. I repeat, we are still marching against hanging on trees. We are marching against knees on necks. Save us now against the religious bigotry, political and legal hegemony. Save us now for our children at the borders and our kids being sold and killed along our Appian way. Hosanna, save us now, O Lord. Grant us your spirit to continue the march. Ride on in our consciousness. Ride on in our hearts. Ride on, King Jesus. Ride on.
Right on. The power of ritual is such that I need to sing our Thich Nhat Hanh chant. So join me in that. I have arrived. I am home in the here and in the now. This helps center me and bring me here, and hopefully it will do the same for you. So we're going to sing that 3 times. I have arrived. I am home in the here and in the now. I have arrived. I am home in the here and in the now. I have arrived. I am home in the here and in the now. Thank you, Kim.
Yes, thank you, Louise. And when I think about having arrived, for many of us on this day, arriving means arriving around a table. It could be a Seder table. It could be a table that is part of a communion table. But there's something about being at table. And Dr. Leah sent us a wonderful poem to use for our reading today. And this poem is it's from, I guess, a collection called The Woman Who Fell from the Sky by Joy Harjo.
Yeah, Harjo.
Harjo, yes. And it's called Perhaps the World Ends Here. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of the earth are brought and prepared and set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. We make men at it. We make women. At this table, we gossip, recall enemies, and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor, falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table. The table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite.
Wow. I love that. Thank you, Kim. That was beautiful. What a great poem. Okay, I'm going to sing a song now called, we borrowed it from Harry Belafonte's song, Hosanna. I don't know if you remember that. Hosanna, build a house, oh, Hosanna. Anyway, Kim and I kind of thought about it, and we came up with some words that we got from somewhere. Don't know where, but anyway, we're going to sing that now. So I put the words in the chat. Hosanna is a word associated with Easter, and it's an expression of adoration, praise, or joy. Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna in the highest. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, oh blessed be. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, oh blessed be. See your king comes riding on a donkey, come and come, oh see. See your king comes seated on a donkey, come, oh come and see. Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna in the highest. Wave your hands and wave your branches, come, oh come and see. Wave your hands and wave your branches, come, oh come and see. Woo! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, oh blessed be. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, oh blessed be. Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna in the highest. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, oh blessed be. Blessed be who comes in the name of the Lord, oh blessed be. Hosanna in the highest, 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 Hosanna in the highest. Oh, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, oh blessed be. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, oh blessed be. Wave your hands and wave your branches, come, oh come and see. Wave your hands and wave your branches, come, oh come and see. Hosanna in the highest, Hosanna in the highest. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, oh blessed be. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, oh blessed be. One more time, too. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, oh blessed be. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, oh blessed be. All right, thank you.
Woo! Thank you, Louise. Say she's being modest. Louise is definitely being modest. Thank you. We're so glad to have you back playing guitar and hope you're feeling okay. And she's being modest because we set up on, I think, Wednesday night and read the readings from the gospel and she came up with those verses. So thank you.
I came up with one and you came up with one.
That how that worked? Okay, hey. We were having a lot of fun with Harry Belafonte for sure. Well, I guess I get to introduce our wonderful speakers for today. And I'm so happy that they are here. Dr. Leah Marie Buturain Schneider. I don't even know if I said all that right, Leah. But she and I met at LMU in the Department of Theological Studies. She's also the wonderful person that gave me this beautiful poster back here. And we had instant connection, so I'm very grateful for that. Dr. Leah is a theologian and a gerontologist, and she focuses on the intersections of spirituality and visual and material culture, especially in late medieval Netherlandish and Italian devotional paintings. Yeah, I'm not going to say that again. I don't think I had enough coffee today. So Dr. Leah is here. And Dr. Ed Schneider, who is Dean Emeritus and Professor of Gerontology and Biological Studies and Medicine at the University of Southern California. And he received his undergraduate... Oh, you know what?
Trojan side.
Yeah, Dr. Ed, for some reason I didn't realize that you went to RPI, to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. I used to live not far from there. We are so glad to have both of them here with us, and we asked them in particular because they have a family that has several different traditions and and have figured out a way of living that together. And so particularly on this day, when families are living their traditions in the presence of each other and around tables, we're so glad to have Dr. Leah and Dr. Ed with us. Thank you so much for being here. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We are so blessed to be with this kindred group of people. I just feel the warmth that you have all shared and forged in your coming together. And even though we're in different Zoom rooms, our hearts are united in wanting to grow in love and wisdom and to pursue the good, the true, and the beautiful together, because we are certainly all connected and our choices impact each other. So my husband just put a beautiful PowerPoint together this week because we have pictures we want to share from the table of our Seder. We have the table of our Holy Week. And then our son, our adopted son from Poland, married into a beautiful Muslim family. And we share with the Iqbal their beautiful table and celebrations. So we have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share. So I'm going to share a screen, and my husband is going to lead us. Let's go back to the beginning. How do you do that? Oh, yes, you have to play the whole thing.
Nope. There we go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Gathering the scattered. When I think about the diaspora, there are many ways. The literal diaspora of people that have lived in exile, and then those of us that have felt in exile because we weren't the right color, or we weren't the right devotion, or we weren't the right education. And we have within ourselves, as Walt Whitman affirmed, a multitude of selves. So when we come together, especially at a time of spring and this Holy Week and Passover, we gather the scattered parts of ourselves and we try to seek to be present to the moment, because that is where the grace is, the moment. So we're going to show you some of the ways that we experience this gathering. Yeah, go ahead. I have problems with Palm Sunday, and I'm not sure if it's because I feel protective that we're such fickle people, and here Jesus is on a donkey and they're praising him, and then very soon, within days, the cloaks that they had piled onto his donkey will be ripped from his body. And so there's a resistance in me. And when Dr. Kim asked me to share, I thought, well, that's I don't want to talk about that. But when I thought about what do we need for soul food, well, we need both our actual food and we need food for our bodies. So we're going to share some stories. Go ahead. We've never presented before, even though we met at a gerontology conference.
So I'm going to talk about Passover and our Passover traditions. This is the Passover Haggadah Haggadah we use, and we use it primarily because it's beautiful. The key to the service for Passover is the 4 questions. And the most important one is, why is this night different from all other nights? And the answer is because it's family fun. It's also because of our leaving the land of Egypt, of course. The Haggadah is English and Hebrew. And here is a Seder plate. So at the Seder, we go through various foods that represent the leaving of the Jews from Israel. Horseradish, for example, represents the bitterness of slavery in Egypt. And then, so here's all the foods that are on the Seder plate, but I'm not going to go into descriptions. Leah said it would take at least an hour. We also have matzah, which is also represented. And the key part of the matzah is the fact that the middle matzah is broken and one piece is hidden. That is the most important part of the service because the children get to look for the matzah, okay? It's called the afikomen. So we take a break in the service and then the children go and search for the afikomen and usually tear apart the house in doing it.
What's the significance of the matzah?
The matzah is the fact that when the Jews left Egypt, they didn't have time to leaven bread. And so they wound up with unleavened bread, which is matzah. Here's the Seder in action. So here's what it looks like.
This was last night.
This was last night's Seder.
Our daughter hosted
Can you
us for
find
the
the
first
arrow?
time.
Let's just get the big screen. Who's the arrow?
Do that same. No.
Okay.
So you can see how serious our Seders are and how we really stick to the scripture. And I told you about the search for the afikomen. We always leave a place setting for Elijah.
And why is that?
Because we're hoping that Elijah will come and show up. Someday maybe he will.
And he represents also making space for those who have gone before us. In Elijah's case, he didn't die, he rose, and Jesus tells us that John the Baptist, that his spirit was in John the Baptist. But we're very aware at the Seder when we celebrate that we have his mother's glasses and that we have his grandmother's tradition of putting the butter. She would put it under the table to sneak it to her grandson because he loves butter.
Well,
So
I should explain that the Seder was on, this particular Seder was on the Sabbath. And anyway, at any meal in Jewish tradition, you don't have meat and dairy at the same time. But as a young child, I loved my butter on my matzah, and they were serving meat, so there was no butter around. So my grandmother used to sneak it to me. You take over now.
Laura Lasworth is with us this morning. She's an amazing artist. You can look her work up. She lives in Seattle and she's taught for many years at Seattle Pacific and Art Center. And she painted a beautiful symbol of our blended family where the Israelites were called into this covenant with God, and then others were invited to be grafted in to the vineyard. And in reality, all of us are invited in for communion. I'm wearing a chalice, the communion cup. You know, we all have the same creator. We're made in the image and of love. And that's our reason for being here. And we choose different ways of pursuing that love. But we know in our hearts that when we resist love out of fear, out of our anxiety of rejection, that we cause our own suffering, because we're being invited in every moment to this love, to this covenant at the table of life. And each of us is needed to show up as ourselves. It takes a lot of courage to do that. But this painting is an inspiration to us, as is our Laura. So thank you. You saw our children, Samuel, Raphael, Isaac, Michael, and Claire Gabriel.
And say something.
Yes.
And they love both the Christian and the Jewish traditions. And since they're part Catholic and part Jewish, they call themselves cashews.
Yes, Catholic Jews, which, as Claire said in her bat mitzvah, since she comes from a nutty family, it's very appropriate. that she's a cashew. And we so love our Islamic family. We just feel so grateful for them. And when my son's mother-in-law was here, she asked for a quiet place and she put her covering on. And I felt that, I know we have all felt this moment where our soul is like a bird, you know, it's just this sense that we are in the presence of the holy. And we had that experience. Ed lost his father very early, who wasn't able to be there for his bar mitzvah. So when we read the letters to Samuel for his bar mitzvah, he's named after his father, we felt very strongly the connection. As Samuel looked up to him and said, this is the bar mitzvah where the father shows up. But in reality, we felt the spirit of Ed's father as well. So we're very grateful for these traditions. You know, it's interesting that the palms that we are given when we're not in COVID are the very palms that are used, burned into ashes and applied at the beginning of the 40 days of Lent to remind us ashes to ashes and dust to dust. And again, whatever we resist persists. So when I resist thinking about the passion or being upset, you know, how horrible a death and the unfairness of life and that injustices are still continuing, innocent people are still being murdered, I have to remember that I can't see the bigger picture, but what I can do for my part is to be welcoming of life's reality on life's terms, not mine. So that is one of the ways that I can participate. And James Ensor, in a painting that was mocked and it had to be taken down from the show at the beginning in the 1900s. It's in the Getty. It has its own wall. You have to go up and look for it in the back building behind the fountains. But he is portraying Palm Sunday as the political travesty that often these big pageants are, where people are, he has actual politicians and church hierarchy people, and they're all clothed. And Jesus, if you can look to the center of the painting, is there on his donkey. And he is holding his hand in blessing, even though he knows these people are going to turn on him and be murderous. And we think of Thich Nhat Hanh and the people, Gandhi, so many great souls that have reminded us of peace being a more powerful than any weapon. And certainly, whatever the questions are, you know, how might we do the same? Welcoming the stranger, welcoming the unhoused, welcoming others, all those in exile, the parts of ourselves, and welcoming life on life's terms. So an artist of color, both Indigenous and African-American, was the first to be able to exhibit, Henry Ossawa Tanner, and he has painted one of the most beautiful Annunciations, not only because of his artistic mastery, but his vision of Gabriel coming in light, pure light, and her, Mary's ability to be in wonderment at this light, this visitation. And this Bedouin, you know, it's a fabulous textile. It's more true to her ethnicity, which often isn't represented. But in our own lives, Gabriel, the messenger of God, comes to us in many forms. It could be the doctor, it could be a stranger, it could be a family member. And if we have primed our heart with love and the discipline of dying to our own ego and its vice and trying to control how the world sees us, if we have opened our heart to the yes of life, we will be able to respond to that news and take a risk for the encounter of love and to say yes to life on life's terms. I'm so grateful for Mary. And yesterday we had a women's retreat, and we felt so much that, as I spoke about Hagar and how Hagar is beloved by Muslims as the matriarch and, you know, reenacted in the Hajj, and that Hagar has been the only person in the Bible that names God. And it was the woman as theologians that really need to help us see how important she is. And she had the first Annunciation about that she was conceiving a child and Ishmael would be the, you know, father of many nations. So maybe instead of Abrahamic religions, you know, think about Mary and matriarchal that Mary is beloved by the Muslims. There are 98 verses about her, and beloved, she's a Jewish mother. We all need a Jewish mother. And Mary shows up as the divine feminine in many cultures. So I am grateful that she's honored in your midst, and I am grateful that as our wonderful friend John August Swanson, who's 83 and muse at LMU, paints that these events happen in the midst of life as we're sweeping, taking out the garbage, reminding our spouses who did the dishes last, and
That's a hint.
learning wit and wisdom, because thank God for my husband's sense of humor. That is a great gift of life. When I prayed about whether I should even go out with him, I saw this Buddha bounce up and was laughing with his hands raised. And I thought, what does that mean? And it's like, it reminds me to just open my hands and say yes and thank you and be welcoming. So thank you for welcoming us. We're grateful to be with you.
Thank you so much. So glad that you both are here with us. And it makes sense because you always, Dr. Leah, offer us beautiful artistic visions, and wonderful to see your family and the Seder and the many ways that you celebrate. So I believe we have a song that is coming up now. Is this Jean?
It is Jean. It is. Thank you. So the song that I've chosen to sing and play for you today on the piano is Yihiyu Le Ratzon Ose Shalom. It's by Bonia Shur, a Jewish composer, a woman for Women's Month. And the is Psalm 19, verse 14. And we're very familiar with this. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. But the first time I sing it, it's in Hebrew. The second verse is Ose Shalom, which is a prayer for peace. And in English, which you won't hear, it means, he who makes peace, may he who makes peace in the high places make peace for all mankind. And I like to change it and say, may all people of the earth work together to make peace for all mankind.
Beautiful. Love those arpeggios. Doodle-doodle-doodle-doodle. Sorry. Okay, it's time for community sharing. So click on participants and click raise hand, and I will call on you. Actually, I'd like to say something real quickly. My father is Jewish, and well, they're both gone now, but my father was Jewish. My mother was Protestant. They weren't religious, but I like that cashew. I love being a combo. It's very fulfilling. I can. This is just a great way of going through. So thank you so much for sharing that. I see Craig's hand up. Go ahead, Craig. Unmute.
Yes, I have a brief comment as well as a more involved question. The comment has to do with how folks would address the whole issue of spirituality for people who have more or less made it a crime to folks giving water to people standing in line trying to vote. And just specifically how that addresses. And, the question comes down to, more or less something that you said about this being Women's History Month and the whole issue and burden of Mary. And I'm more or less, I guess you could say, puzzled by some of what our Latina sisters have said in regards to recognizing Jesus as being holy and divine and being birthed, by someone who doesn't have that same kind of reverence, Mary, if indeed he is, quote unquote, God in one sense, and he comes from a woman who is not a goddess, then how do we address that? And is there any kind of, I guess you could say, words of encouragement or teachings that come from the Jewish faith that addresses any of this?
Oh, am I to answer that beautiful, soulful question?
It's an open question to either you or the husband.
Oh, thank you. My husband has helped me read the scriptures with more appreciation for the Jewish culture in which they were forged, shared stories. And in one way, for example, with the wedding of Cana, when Jesus tells Mary, "It's not my time yet," and she kind of goes over his head and says to the waiters, "Do whatever he tells you." So she leads the way and said, well, of course she's a Jewish mother. She's not going to take no for an answer. And that's on the more humorous side, but the more challenging part of your soulful question is, what is the incarnation? What does it mean to be human? And then what is this claim that Jesus was fully human and fully divine? And there are many people that dispute about, was Mary fully human? Was she, immaculate conception? And there are only opinions declared about that. for me, her humanity and the fact that she didn't know everything that would happen, but that her heart was pierced by what did happen, and she had to treasure these things in her heart and endure seeing her son suffer, that compassion is very moving to me as a mother, because I too have grieved when I feel helpless not to be able to heal or to rescue my child from their struggle, whether that's mental illness or whatever problem that each of us faces. We all have a shadow side and we all have these afflictions. So to see humanity in Mary and to see Jesus, what the 4th century Gregor Nazianzus said is, if he hadn't become fully human, only what is assumed can be healed. So Palm Sunday is part of like taking on all of humanity, the glory and the tragedy. And we, by thinking about our own death, take on the arc of our lives, that we're limited and mortal, and that we sometimes feel so desolate, so undone, that we can barely stay in our own skins. And it takes great courage to survive. So I'm grateful for those who can hold me or bring me water in the wilderness. And I'm so glad you mentioned about people who volunteer in compassion, whether it's for vaccinations or for water, for voting, because many people have sacrificed to have the right to vote. So thank you.
Thank you both. Who would like to share? If you want, just unmute and speak. Whoever wants to share. I don't see any hands up.
Okay, I've got my hand up there, Louise. This is Dr. Kim. And I definitely appreciate this morning. I mean, you all know me. I am a ritual geek. If somebody's got a ritual going, I want to be involved in some kind of way. But also in thinking about the way that I grew up in a space that was really a liminal kind of space, sort of a crossing over space. I lived in a neighborhood in Philadelphia, and they were kind of integrating street by street. And so my family lived on the last street in Northwest Philly for a while that Black people, that realtors would even sell a house to Black people. And the next street was one where they said, no, we're not going to sell it to Black people, only white people and only Jewish people can live there. And yet what happened was that we wound up going to the same schools. We wound up being friends, and we wound up celebrating with each other. So there's part of my DNA that feels like, that the celebrations, while I appreciate that, this comes from Jewish tradition, gathering around a table makes me feel like home, because it reminds me of being with my friends and celebrating Passover. And of course, gathering around, a Eucharistic table, makes me feel at home, because it reminds me of the Presbyterian church where I grew up. So I think there's something about when these holidays come together, and I say to my students things like, it's about location, 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 and the sun and the moon and the stars. And so when they align, then we wind up getting to have the pleasure of celebrating together. And I think that helps us out. So I appreciate your family stories, Leah and Ed. Thank you so much for sharing those stories. Oh, now, Leah, there was a story that you didn't tell. I remember you were talking to me about it. One of the family stories about how you all shared. Do you remember that one? Or I don't know if you want to.
Oh, there are many. In taking a little clip, it looks like things are wonderful, and it was a truly wonderful evening. But it is challenging to have such strong personalities, such different past and histories, and try and blend them. And I think that when we think life is going to be a certain way, we set ourselves up for disappointment. But when I can try to be welcoming, then I see the wonderment. And COVID has taken away many of the things we took for granted. And for the first time, I went to Trader Joe's, and I felt like in our town, Emily, like do they know what they get to do? I mean, like all these choices, it's amazing. And so the story you may have been thinking about was one in which there is the challenge of how to, we did not want to squelch our children's spirit, so we chose not to have any physical punishment, but then we probably went the other way. And then, so then the question is how to celebrate each child and each person and be grateful for their story. So I didn't tell you a story, but I have to say I'm so grateful for me that I love all the wisdom traditions. For me, Jesus is the window, the icon unto love. And I bow for the holiness of each person and whatever source of love that animates them. So.
Okay, Janet. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to speak? Husband? I forgot your name. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yes, you're on mute, Dr. Ed. We want to hear what you said. Yes.
From your monologue?
Must they ask for it? No.
No, they asked for it.
Were they, what were they like?
A family story.
Oh, there's so many of them.
Jewish, coming to America, refugee.
Okay.
Well, you took care of refugees, your family.
So my grandmother's had owned a 6-family home, apartment building in Brooklyn, and I grew up there before Brooklyn became fashionable. And on the first floor was my grandmother and my uncle, and the second floor was my parents. Starting in 1946, my grandmother took in Holocaust survivors. So I always remember a new face, a new family being downstairs. I didn't quite understand why, because I was only 6 years old. But my grandmother did that for about 5 years until they got a job, until they found a place to live. And one of those refugees turned out to be the person who inspired me to go into medicine. So it became a full circle.
That's great. Janet, and then Rachel, and then Gail.
I just wanted to say thank you both for a wonderful message. I was attending a multiple belongings conference a couple of times, and there's a woman who leads a congregation that's intentionally Jewish and Christian. So they have Christian and Jewish upbringing for the children, like Sunday school, and they steep them in both, and they train them in both. And so they know the statistics on how many couples are, one Jewish and one Christian. And so it's more common than people think. And one of the reasons that I appreciate the church in Ocean Park is that it's that, but it's also more, because if you are a family that has multiple faith traditions within it, and you decide to go to one, what are you saying about the others? So I really appreciated that. But what they have that we don't have as much is intentional training in each one, because they're intentionally just the two different religions. I was wondering, one question that I do have is, you did bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs for your children, but did you also do like first communions in the Catholic Church?
Yes. Ed wasn't religiously observant, so for many years, so I would take the children by myself to church. And then when I was pregnant with Isaac, some Jewish friends, I asked if we could share their Shabbat, and he remembered he did like the music. So when the 3 children were under the age of 5, he found that there was a Polish cousin who needed adopting. So from the survivor side of the family, so you can tell the story about Jacob.
So my grandmother's family was wiped out in the Holocaust, with the exception of her nephew, who was in the Polish army. And he saw the writing on the wall at the beginning of the war and grabbed his parents and moved them to the Russian sector. And he surrendered to the Russians rather than the Germans, because he knew he would survive with the Russians and he wouldn't survive with the Germans. So the Russians threw all the Poles into camps, didn't treat them very well, killed all the officers. And then a year and a half later, the Germans invaded Russia. And Russia now had 100,000 Polish army members who had no officers. So they went around and made new officers. One of them was my grandmother's nephew. And he wound up fighting against the Germans. And at the end of the war, he was a colonel. And his grandson came to America and visited me and Leah. And we decided to adopt him, and he went to USC. And now he's provided us with 2 grandchildren. It's a wonderful story.
Oh, wow. That's a great story.
But,
Thank you so much.
But to answer your question, when he came, we were going to an Episcopal church in Pasadena, All Saints, because they had a rabbi at Leonard. It was wonderful. And we really liked all the people that would come, like, you know, Bishop Tutu. And, but Jacob looked at it and said, I can't go there. I have to go to where the Pope would approve. And Ed said, what do you mean? You're Jewish? And he said, no, my mother raised me. My mother's Catholic. I was an altar boy. So we needed to move. So that's when things got a little more complicated. But then his sister came to live with us. So we jumped from 3 to 5 people.
Wow. Interesting.
All right. Thank you, Rachel, and then Gail.
Good morning. I want to thank you, first of all, for bringing up Mother Mary as a matriarch. I am drawn to the female spirituality of things, and that has drawn me into the Wiccan religion. And you know, a very feminine-based spirituality. So I want to thank you for that, pointing that out. I don't think there is enough of that in the major texts, whether it be Christian texts, you know, the Bible or the Quran or Torah. I was just, while I was waiting, I Googled the book of Ruth, and it said basically the main point of that was honesty and loyalty, and I think that that's something that needs to be heralded. In answer, you know, in response to Craig's question about basically, quote unquote, good Christian folks passing laws to keep people from handing out water to people standing in line for 6, 7, and 10 hours waiting to do their, you know, their public civic duty, you know, and claiming to be Christians and claiming to be of God. It is, you know, I think of Revelations, where the false prophets, you know, I'm not saying that these are the end times, but it just, you know, the whole idea of these false prophets and these mega churches that spew this hatred, particularly against folks like me who are transgender, LGBTQ, and certainly, you know, they definitely have a racist component to them as well. And I've said it 1,000 times before, and I'll say it 1,000,000 times in the future. To me, the textbook definition of evil is the weaponization of religion. And then my last point is, you know, God as an eternal entity within the universe, I believe not to be male or female, as genderless. And you know, I hope that those who preach the gospel and you know, other texts will try to include that kind of thing into their messaging to their parishioners, because you know, certainly the patriarchy over the centuries, over the millenniums, has not done us any service. And I really think that the feminine is our future towards a more peaceful planet.
Thank you. That is so important to hear and to affirm. And one of the movements of the Spirit is for the feminine. And there was a Mystic Summit offered last month. Actually, it was in February. And so many people came. Like, it's amazing. They're retrieving. I love the medieval mystics. And the feminine is alive and well. And many of the people, like the imam and the rabbi whom Mary spoke to, they are experiencing this. And mystics have always been relegated as threatening of the hierarchy, and they certainly don't fit into normative, but it's that ecstatic spirit that we see in Hafiz and Kabir and many of the poets for love, calling us back to love. So naturally the feminine does that. And one of my favorite Al-Anon meetings is an LGBTQ meeting. So I feel real community there and real love and acceptance. Those of us that have suffered or been in exile, we so appreciate how important it is to have that merciful balm of unconditional regard. So thank you.
Thank you. Gail Price, unmute and speak. Oh, you're already unmuted.
I am unmuted this time. You know, I grew up in a church-going Protestant family, every Sunday, Presbyterian. But my grandfather was had been a congregational minister, so it, deeply rooted. But my father became very, well, he taught himself Hebrew. His initial, motivation for that was to want to read the Bible in a more authentic language. And, he studied the Old Testament particularly, and he got drawn into Jewish traditions and Jewish faith, and which he, of course, shared with us. I wasn't that open to it. I wasn't even open to the Presbyterian church, but he would constantly be telling us stories from the Talmud and prayers, taught us several different prayers. And he spent years and years and years studying. He would drive about 40 miles each way once a week to go visit Rabbi Parzan, because we were living in a small Midwest town. There were no Jews. But so for me, I've never felt this separation in a way between Protestant and Jewish. And I never knew how to, talk about that, but it always felt like they go together, Judeo-Christian. But later, what has been so important for me in a way that the Christian church never gave me any solace was my mother passed away when I was 9 after a number of years of having cancer. And people would, your mom's in a better place. She's with God now. It's like, why does God need her? I need her more, But when I became exposed to the mourning rituals in the Jewish faith, that was like opened up for me. And it was like acknowledging the loss, remembering this is a different time, and to this day, I find that very, very, very moving. And like Jean, the music to me is just like, your song just brought me to tears. Just like when I was in high school, I played the cello. I don't anymore, but I played Bloch's Kol Nidre. And I just couldn't get through it because it was so, it just poured out. It was such an outlet for me. It still is. So, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for, even though as a teenager, I thought my dad was very weird. And, didn't quite know what to do with it. But he introduced me to really important traditions and ritual that I'm very grateful for.
Beautiful. Yes, we heard a beautiful lecture at LMU where she said we need these stories from these other traditions because we're impoverished in our symbolism of dying. And dying is a part of death, and memento mori, when we can think of our death and honor and reverence it and help people grieve, hold space for them, it's better for all of us. Thank you for that. And that Buddha kept showing up for us. And I have sat with my Buddhist brothers and sisters and felt like that ability to be in stillness, that's what unites all of us. The very thing we fear, not having anything to distract us, is when we get past the surface of the water to the deeper waters, is what is healing and reminds us that our being, the Sabbath, is what celebrates that. It's our being, our presence is what really is the most important. And we each have our own tincture, our own redolence or pungency. And that's what makes us an amazing bouquet. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. I believe that I'm next. Louise, I don't want to jump on what you were going to do for the last song. But as Dr. Leah started talking about water, you know what I'm thinking of here.
Oh, okay.
So indeed, one of the things that I always appreciated about getting to celebrate together is the way that the African American community historically really took the Jewish story of liberation from Mitzrayim, from the narrow place. We took it as to our hearts and inspired us so much. And of course, the song "Wade in the Water." Sang that around many a Passover table. So please, you all know what to do. Get some good rhythm going. All right. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Come on and wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Who are those children all dressed in red? God's gonna trouble the water. Must be the ones that Moses led. God's gonna trouble the water. Come on and wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Ah, who are those children all dressed in red? God's gonna trouble the water. Well, Harriet Tubman helped those children. Yes, she did. Yeah. God's gonna trouble the water. Come on and wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Now, in the civil rights movement, they sang that same verse, but they added a different name to it. And they said, "Oh, who are those children all dressed in red? Yeah, God's gonna trouble the water." Well, they must be the ones that Bob Moses led. Come on, God's gonna trouble the water. Yeah, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Yeah, who are those children all dressed in black? Come on, God's gonna trouble the water. Well, we're never, 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 never going back. God's gonna trouble the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. One more time. Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, God's gonna trouble the water. Yeah, God's gonna trouble the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, thanks everybody. Thanks for dancing, Carolyn. Thanks for you're all swaying and clapping. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you. And waving those palms, Reverend Joseph. Yeah. Oh, Carolyn, thanks. I saw you dancing. All right.
Thank you for your music.
Thank you, Kim. And Coraline, would you like to introduce yourself? And there's other people that I haven't seen very often, and maybe you'd like to unmute and say hi to us, everybody.
Well, I'm Caroline Andrews Taylor, and I was invited by Leah Marie, and she and I have been working on various projects. One of them was a women's retreat, and I got to present on the Book of Ruth. And in addition to honesty and loyalty, I'd say that she was also very respectful and believed in God's providence and provision. And she was the great grandmother of King David. So that was, and eventually our Jesus Christ, our divine kinsman redeemer. So,
Well, welcome.
thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, welcome. Anybody else who's here for the first time would like to say hello? Just unmute and go ahead.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'll just say hello here. I'm in Seattle and very happy to be a good friend of Leah and Ed's. And this was just wonderful. It was so wonderful to hear them speak together. And there were a couple stories Ed told that I'd never heard before, just beautiful stories. And just the community you have here is really quite lovely. So thank you for inviting me. I've really enjoyed this. And I'm in upstairs dancing to the whole last song. It was, I was going to film myself for Leah and send it to her and Ed, but I'm still in my jammies, which is why you can't see me here in the photograph. But thank you so much. This has been delightful.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you for sharing your artwork as well.
Yeah.
And if anybody would like to know what get our weekly email, then you can put your name and email in the chat. We just do it once a week. We don't bombard people.
That's right. Yeah, Gail, go ahead.
I don't know, some of you may know Claudia, who's been part of our Monday night small group. She is the aunt of Lauren Leslie. So it's so good to see her here. She lives up in Port Townsend.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Right. I have a couple of friends up there.
Welcome. Glad you're here.
Welcome, Claudia.
Yeah. Thank you. This has been, I started when coming here right in the beginning when Lauren first gave us the invitation. And then I've been attending Monday night support group with Gail and Jean and Chuck and Abby and Dunya, and it's been just fantastic for me to and so I feel as if I'm very much a part. And I thought, I'm going to give myself the gift of coming to this Palm Sunday event and And it's just been just fantastic. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. You're welcome to be here. Thank you so much. Welcome. Anybody else who's new? All right. Well, we're going to go into announcements now. And, Janet wanted to share more. We have more information or new information perhaps about the shul, the Cool Shul Seder tonight. Concerns and
Yes. Thank you so much, Louise, for keeping all of that going. So for joys and concerns, if you would please type them into the chat. And then, and while that's going on, our wonderful Louise will be playing some music. So please put your joys and concerns in the chat, and then we will, I'll read them out afterwards. And Jean will get us going when I start reading them out. She has something very special for us. So please, yes, let us know who we are thinking about, who we are lifting up, who we are remembering.
now we bless you in our humble way. From now on forever, from now on forever, from now on forever, Alleluia. This song is by Debbie Friedman, Jewish songwriter. I think she's written a lot of songs. Now we bless you in our humble way. From now on forever, from now on forever, from now on forever.
So, Jean, would you please get us started?
Yes. Two people in our Monday night connection circle, which was led by Lauren, and she's taken a break in anticipation of the birth of her baby. Two of the people in the group have written poems for Lauren and her husband and the whole family, the whole Leslie family. So I'm going to start off with Claudia, who you just heard speak. Claudia's sister wrote this poem, Prayer for the Leslie Family. Dear Lord, a couple is waiting, together strong yet scared, together patient yet anxious, together excited yet worried. Please bring them courage and calm. Dear Lord, a mother is waiting to take a breath and give new life, to release what she has held so close, to give of herself and bring forth a new self. Please bring her courage and calm. Dear Lord, an angel is waiting to feel cool air, to touch warm skin, to see bright sunshine, to become one with this world. Please bring her courage and calm. Dear Lord, a family is waiting, not sure of how to be 3 and more, beginning a journey with no clear end, except the love from which it was born. Please bring them courage and calm. Dear Lord, may we be to this family whatever they need. May our stories encourage their own exciting adventure. And I don't know if I said it, this was written by Claudia's sister, who is Lauren's auntie. So that was the first poem, and the second one was written by Chuck Howell, who is also in our Monday night connection circle. Chuck says, may you feel the welcome vibe as we await your arrival. It's love you'll see, feel, and understand in just a few days. Your warm, moist place will be interrupted by strange voices. You'll see we are here for you. We have loved you for a while, though we've never seen you. We are ready for the singular event, your birth, which we will cherish forever. You'll see. What you will hear is the music, the song of your beginning, the song of your life as it unfolds. So new, strange for a while, but not forever. You'll see.
Oh, that's neat.
I had to work to keep it all together while reading that, Chuck. That's so gorgeous. My goodness. Thank you.
Okay, we can do a quick version of Haida Haida. Ningun. Oh, words that don't have a meaning per se, but just celebrate joy. Let's see. Haida, 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 Haida,
Now's the time when we turn off our mute, and we're going to say to everybody all around the world, carry on, because that's what we do together. We hold our hands from ways away, no matter who they are, no matter what religion or what faith tradition they're from, or what they look like, or where they're from. And we say together with them, carry on. 1, 2, 3. Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry it on.